he's not the most refined. He's not the most graceful. However, he's incredibly hardworking.
There's no way to sugarcoat it. He is prone to the odd error, like really bad touch or just a silly decision. But...
E aí galera, beleza? Bora dar uma olhada aí no que os ingleses, né, estão falando aí sobre a possível ida do Yuri Alberto do Corinthians para o West Ham da Premier League, né, da Inglaterra. E bora dar uma olhada aí nos torcedores do West Ham, vamos ver o que eles falaram sobre o Yuri Alberto, fizeram uma análise aí dele completa, pra ver se é vantajoso, né, ter o Yuri Alberto aí. Então é um canal aí dos torcedores do West Ham, né, aqui o canal deles aqui, quem quiser dar uma olhada lá, falando sobre o Yuri Alberto do West Ham, e fizeram análise aqui, né, como vocês podem ver. Então bora dar uma olhada aí nas reações deles sobre o Yuri Alberto no West Ham. Os representantes do West Ham vieram aqui pro Brasil fazer proposta pra ele, bora ver como que vai ser. Se você curtir o vídeo assim, deixa o like, se inscreva no canal e bora pro vídeo, rapaziada.
It's about he's back on the plane out to Brazil to try and sign another player. This time a forward-thinking player in Yuri Alberto. Potentially what he could bring to this West Ham team. So the name Yuri Alberto. Talk to me a little bit about his kind of background, Mike, before we kind of get in the statistics and kind of how he's found himself back in the Brazilian league. Because it wasn't too long ago he actually moved to a European team for quite a big fee. You were saying.
Yeah, basically he started off at sorry for pronunciation, Internazionale, broke through at 18 and left on a free contract to go to Corinthians, did fairly well, then got the dream move to then Europe, went and played for Zenit and, went for about 20 million euros, so a decent price. Russia then got very grabby with Ukraine, so things went a bit south there. So like most players that were kind of in Russia or in Ukraine, they kind of were getting that ability to, cancel their contracts, which has obviously happened. Great for Corinthians because they got him back. So they got £15 million for him, or 20 million. 50 million pounds, that's right. And then they've managed to get him back completely for free. And so, yeah, it's an interesting one in how he's kind of moved recently. Obviously, he burst through, has been pretty good scoring form. I'm pretty sure it was 36 goals and assists from the age of 18. I think for the first 2 years that he broke through, so up to 20. And that's pretty good going for an 18-year-old to kind of break through. Obviously, over 2 seasons, 36 goals and assists is pretty impressive. And Brazil isn't necessarily for the faint at heart of a league. It's quite physical and be quite robust. So. Yeah. He's done really quite well, and then obviously moved back. Hasn't necessarily hit as many goals this season. I think over the course of last year, in all competitions, including in Russia, it was around about 18 goals and I think about 6-7 assists in total. So he does have goals in him. It's just maybe not been as free-flowing as people would hope this season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, breaking down the stats from this season, obviously the Brazil League's kind of weird because their season starts at the start of the year. So they play around 20 games in the Serie A competition with other competitions as well. But we're just focusing on that. He scored 4 goals and got 2 assists this season. But last year it was slightly better return in front of goal. He got 8 goals and obviously 1 assist in Serie A. So it's not a bad return, nearly a goal every 2 games. And like you mentioned there before, he was, scoring really, quite prolifically in his kind of early years. And he's still only 22. Sloth, moving on to you before we break down the stats. Just off the bat of kind of what you've seen of him, what type of player is he before we kind of get into the underlying statistics?
He's really someone who will suit Moyes' system. Like there's no way to sugarcoat it. He is prone to the odd error, like really bad touch or just a silly decision. But it's not something that's going to get him sent off. It's literally just his brain. He'll have a brain fart. And so in that sense, he is essentially a young Antonio. He is 6 foot. He's very strong. Like he's got a very muscular build to him. But he's really quick and he works really hard. Like he creates a lot of opportunities for other players because of his pressing of defenders. So he does lead the line from the front. He tends to be a bit more of a second striker, but you wouldn't guess it because he's the one chasing players down, being that terrier and really causing problems for defenders.
Well, we've said that, you know, the striker coming in just going to kind of try and be that long-term replacement for Antonio. I mean, we've seen how important he is to that David Moyes team over the last few years. So getting in the right profile is key. Do you think that's probably why we're maybe even looking at outside of the kind of top 5 European leagues and maybe looking to profile someone who's a little bit more accustomed to how Antonio plays? So maybe we can develop him into someone that eventually can perform in the Premier League like Antonio has done for us.
I think he's definitely the sort of player who can become that. As we kind of said, like, you know, he can play across the attack. So very similar to Antonio in that sense. His record as a centre forward is actually really quite good. I think he's played about 130 games there, and he's got about 15 assists and about 46 goals. So, you know, it's a goal involvement every other game pretty much. And I think for that sort of age as well, that's not something to be sniffed at. He is a player who I think would be happy to come in as well and rotate. As I mentioned, he's got a good work ethic on the pitch. By all accounts, he's got that in training as well. So if you think, you know, Moyes is going to start Antonio, and then after 70 minutes, if he says, go on, just cause problems, you're going to have a really quick, strong young player to just go and harass defenders.
Yeah, so obviously this is the 2022 season. So this is the year he moved back to Corinthians. So it's not obviously the current season. But what we can see is obviously once he moved back, he's pretty much in where you want him to be. So from the terms of the attacking output, he's right on that medium line, if not above it. Obviously scored 8 goals last season. He overachieved arguably on the opportunities that he had. I'm not really going to go much into these, in all honesty, because I think it's important just to talk around what he can bring to us as a player and what some of the things that are encouraging. The encouraging aspects are the fact that he can finish with either foot, left foot or right foot, and there's no real difference in the quality of his ball striking in either
That's
foot.
massive in a striker these days, isn't it?
It is, and it's something that we've seen in Antonio, that at times his left foot is as good as his right, but then what we sometimes see of Antonio is that he doesn't take that moment to set himself, whereas with Yuri Alberta, he does not care about shooting. He will shoot from anywhere, inside, outside the box, left foot, right foot. If there's an opportunity to have a go, he will. And he's also got a decent header as well. So you can get crosses in. Whilst he's only 6 foot, there's a decent leap on him. As I say, that his finishing is fairly and pretty composed as well. As Sloth says, he does have those brain fart moments, which is why when you look at kind of his, some of his possession pieces, like his accuracy in passes. But however, we can caveat that because when you compare most strikers, their passing isn't at the level where you go, oh, that's amazing in terms of their completions. But he does progress play well. He's happy to carry it. If we go on to what Antonio said before, in that a David Moyes striker needs to fight and be willing to play off scraps. Now, Corinthians, quite frankly, haven't been the Corinthians team that probably people will think they've been, because they'll remember back when Carlos Tevez was there, and also as Mascherano as a team that were fighting towards the top end. These are very middle of the road kind of team now in Brazil, and he will fight for everything. He's not the most refined, he's not the most graceful, however he's incredibly hardworking, does have good feet, as I said, he good header of the ball as well if given the opportunity, and he will do the things that we want, which is run the channels, do that horrible donkey work that some strikers don't want to do. And to Sloth's point around Pedro, he operates well within the 18-yard area, Pedro, and that's not really how we can get a striker working unless we play a 2 up top, and we don't play a 2 up top. So that kind of striker, whilst it could get you goals, which we saw again with Scamacca, it can get you goals, and they will get you goals.
To buy, is that a move that excites you? Someone coming from the Brazilian league, 22
it would
years
excite
old.
me if that deal keeps Luis Paqueta past next year. That's as a deal how it would excite me. At the moment, there's not a huge amount to get excited about because there are other Brazilians we've been linked to who have been far more exciting, such as Franca, who's gone obviously to Crystal Palace. We were looking at obviously Victor Roque as well. So they've been far more exciting ones. However, we've constantly advocated for exciting signings that are not necessarily be all and end all. It's the smart signings, and he could be a smart signing, and that's the thing. I'm not necessarily that bothered about being excited, providing it's a smart signing, and he's one of those that could be a John Chieri, or he could be, the surprise package that everyone, like that we keep seeing at Brighton pick up. He could be one of those. He could obviously be a John Chieri. So it could go either way.
E é isso, galera. Comenta aí o que você achou das reações, da análise aí dos ingleses, né, dos torcedores do West Ham, falando sobre o Yuri Alberto. E comenta aí se você acha que o Yuri Alberto vai aceitar a proposta. O Corinthians também, né, que tá vendendo bastante jogadores importantes aí, vendeu o Roger Guedes. Então vamos ver agora se vai ser o Yuri Alberto que vai sair de vez, né. Já tá sendo um desmanche no Corinthians aí, já foi eliminado na Copa do Brasil com esse desmanche. Então vamos ver o que vai ser os próximos dias do Yuri Alberto no Corinthians, se ele vai aceitar a proposta. Se for uma proposta boa, assim, tem que ter muito dinheiro envolvido pra vender assim o Yuri Alberto, que é um bom jogador, ele é jovem ainda, mas vamos ver o que vai ser dessas negociações. Se você curtir, deixa o like, inscreva no canal, assista outros vídeos. Tamo junto, valeu, e é nóis, galera, até o próximo vídeo. Valeu, rapaziada.